Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into the life and work of, well, a true legend, Charlie Chaplin. The man behind the iconic Tramp.
Right, right. The guy with the bowler hat, the baggy pants.
Exactly.
Huh.
Now, I'm sure most of you know the basics, silent film star, all that. But today, we're going beyond that, trying to understand the creative genius behind the persona.
And it's fascinating stuff because, he was a global icon, right? But his work was so deeply personal, so specific to his own experiences.
Yeah, like how does someone go from, poverty in London to being this beloved figure worldwide?
That's where our source material comes in.
Yep.
We're using this chapter from the Encyclopedia of Creativity to guide our deep dive today.
Perfect. So it's not just about Chaplin's life, but really about the roots of his creativity and the impact it had.
Exactly. So I guess to kick things off, have you ever wondered, what actually made Chaplin tick, creatively speaking?
It's a good question because you think about it, the guy was a comedian, but his work often had these really poignant moments, sometimes even tragic undertones.
Right, and he did all of this without, well, most of the time without even uttering a word.
Yeah, most of his most famous films were silent. So there's that paradox. A silent film star who mastered the art of making us laugh, cry, sometimes both at the same time.
And we can't forget the music. He was a gifted musician and composer, even scored most of his own films.
I did not know that.
Yep. Even won an Oscar for Limelight, I think it was.
So we've got this guy who's funny, but also deep. He's silent, but understands music.
A global star, but with this very personal story. It all comes together to create, well, the Chaplin we know and love.
All right, so let's unpack some of this. I think the best place to start is with Chaplin's childhood. I mean, you think Hollywood, you think glitz and glamour.
Oh yeah, completely different world. Chaplin's upbringing was, well, let's just say it was a far cry from red carpets and movie premieres.
Understatement of the year. The source mentions workhouses, time on the streets, all this before he even hit his teens.
Dickensian, pretty much. Tough childhood, to say the least. And it's, I think it's more than just a biographical detail. This hardship, it really shaped his worldview.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But in this case, it also seems like it made him funnier.
Right. Because there's this deep understanding of the underdog in Chaplin's work.
Yeah.
The little guy struggling against the system. It's in almost everything he did.
The Tramp, for example, that iconic character.
Right.
He's constantly battling authority figures, finding humor in these, well, pretty dire situations.
Exactly. And I think that's what resonates with people even today. There's this empathy there, this recognition of the human struggle.
It's like he's taking these experiences, these hardships, and transforming them into something universal.
It's art, really. Taking pain and turning it into something that connects with people on a really deep level.
And it's interesting because he becomes this American icon, right? Even though he was British through and through.
Yeah. Arrived in the U.S. in 1913, just as the film industry was taking off. And he basically rode that wave to stardom.
So he embodies this rags to riches dream, this American ideal. But
It's not that simple, is it?
no, because at the same time, he's critiquing American culture, like in modern times.
Oh, yeah. That whole sequence where he's swallowed up by the factory machinery.
It's funny, but also kind of terrifying, like a commentary on the dehumanizing aspects of industrialization.
Exactly. He's using comedy to make us think about the downsides of progress.
So again, this paradox, embracing America, yet also challenging it.
And it makes you wonder, did he ever really feel like he belonged, even at the height of his fame?
Great question. And maybe that's part of what made him so compelling. He was this outsider, but also this insider, this observer who could see things that others couldn't, or maybe were afraid to see.
And then there's the whole thing about him being a silent film star who was also a gifted musician.
Oh, right. We mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. It just blows my mind, honestly. The guy was composing scores, creating this whole auditory landscape for films that were, silent.
It's like he was thinking in terms of sound, even when there were no spoken words.
Which I think speaks to his understanding of rhythm, timing. These are things that are crucial to both music and comedy.
So he's not just a visual storyteller. He's got this whole other layer of artistry going on.
And it all comes together to create these films that honestly still feel fresh and relevant today, even though they were made almost 100 years ago.
That's what I find amazing. It's like they transcend their time period.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They tap into something universal about the human experience, the struggle, the joy, the absurdity of it all.
And he managed to capture all of that without saying a word. Just incredible.
So in the next part, we're going to dig into some specific examples, like how Chaplin turned starvation into a visual gag, how he found comedy in some pretty dark places.
Can't wait. Okay, so we've been talking about how Chaplin used visual storytelling.
Mm.
But the source also mentions something pretty profound, his belief that comedy actually comes from tragedy.
Yeah, it's not just some theory he came up with. I mean, you can see it directly in his work, right? Like, think about his childhood.
Right, those tough early years, poverty, workhouses.
Exactly. And he turns those experiences into the Tramp's persona, finding humor in situations that, well, for most people, wouldn't be funny at all.
It's like he's saying, if I don't laugh, I'll cry. But he does it in a way that, I don't know, it just resonates. It's universal.
Yeah, it taps into that human experience, finding lightness even when things are tough.
And there's this quote from this source that really struck me. Chaplin saw comedy as a strategy for living.
Powerful stuff. He wasn't just trying to entertain. It was deeper than that. It was about coping, about finding meaning.
So it's not just about the laughs, it's about something more.
Right. It's about using humor to deal with the challenges of life, the absurdity of it all.
Which makes those gags, those seemingly simple bits of physical comedy.
They take on a whole new meaning.
They do. Like take that scene in The Gold Rush, where the tramp is starving and he starts eating his shoe.
Oh, yeah. Classic Chaplin.
On the surface, it's hilarious. The way he picks the nails, slurps the laces like spaghetti.
But underneath that, there's this commentary on poverty, on desperation, what it means to be truly hungry.
It's like he's making us confront these uncomfortable truths, but he's doing it through laughter. So we're disarmed,
Yeah.
drawn in.
That's the brilliance of it. He could make you laugh and think at the same time. And he wasn't afraid to push boundaries to make people squirm a little.
Which brings us back to that complex relationship with America. He achieved so much success there, became a symbol of the American dream yet.
Yet he was also critiquing it, pointing out the flaws, the cracks in the facade.
Exactly. It wasn't blind adoration, and it wasn't just in modern times. You see those themes throughout his work.
Right, the Tramp is always battling against these dehumanizing forces. Bureaucracy, technology, bad luck.
But he always perseveres.
Yeah.
Right. There's this resilience, this indomitable spirit. He never gives up.
Yeah, and I think that's why his films still resonate today. They tap into these universal human experiences, the desire for connection, the fight for justice.
That search for meaning in a world that often feels meaningless.
Exactly, and they remind us that even in the darkest times, there's always room for hope, for laughter.
That little bit of magic that helps us get through.
It's funny, though, because we talked about his improvisational style, right? But the source also talks about his perfectionism.
Oh, right. He was known for reshooting scenes countless times.
Yeah, like obsessed with getting it right. So how do you reconcile those two things, the spontaneity and the meticulous control?
It's almost like a contradiction.
It is, but I think it speaks to this really interesting duality in his creative process. On the one hand, he understood that you can't force those truly inspired moments.
Those moments of genius, they have to
Right.
come organically.
Exactly, but he also knew that you have to refine them, shape them, polish them.
So it's a balancing act. Letting go and then taking control.
And maybe, just maybe, that tension is what fueled his creativity.
I think you're right. It wasn't just about being funny or telling a good story. It was about achieving this level of artistry, something that few filmmakers have ever matched.
And that required discipline, vision, and this insane attention to detail.
Makes you wonder what ended up on the cutting room floor. All those takes, all those variations.
Must have been a treasure trove of comedic gold. But it speaks to his dedication, right? The work ethic that went into creating these masterpieces.
And his drive for control. It's not surprising that he eventually formed his own production company, United Artists.
He wanted autonomy. He wasn't content to be just another actor churning out film.
He wanted to be the architect of his own vision.
And that allowed him to create some of the most iconic and enduring works in film history. He had the freedom to experiment, to take risks, to push boundaries.
And he wasn't afraid to tackle controversial subjects, especially in his later films.
There was a lot of backlash, a lot of criticism, but he never backed down.
It took courage to stand up for what he believed in, especially during such a tumultuous period in history.
And in doing so, he left a legacy that goes way beyond entertainment. He showed us that comedy can be a powerful tool for social change.
That laughter can be a weapon against injustice.
And that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit can triumph.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with Chaplin. His early life, his relationship with America, the music. But, the source keeps coming back to this thing about his filmmaking process.
Oh, yeah.
This, mix of improvisation and Well, almost obsessive control.
Right. It's like, on the one hand, you have this guy who'd start filming without a finished script.
Yeah. Letting the scenes evolve,
Mhm.
playing with ideas on the fly.
Totally. But then he was also a notorious perfectionist, reshooting scenes over and over.
I know, it's almost a contradiction. How can you be so spontaneous and yet so controlling?
It's fascinating, isn't it? But I think it speaks to this, like, deep understanding he had of comedy.
Like, where does the humor come from?
Exactly. Chaplin knew that sometimes the best moments, the truly funny stuff, it can't be planned. It has to happen organically.
So you got to leave room for those happy accidents.
Right. But then you also have to hone it, refine it, shape it into something truly special.
So it's not just about capturing a funny moment. It's about making it the best it can be.
Yeah. Finding the perfect rhythm, the exact expression, all of that.
Which makes me wonder how much ended up on the cutting room floor. All those takes, all those variations.
Oh, I bet there's a treasure trove of unseen Chaplin gold out there somewhere. But it shows his dedication, the sheer amount of work he put in.
And it goes back to that control thing, right?
Right.
He needed to have his hands on every aspect of the process.
Exactly. Which is why it makes sense that he broke away from the studio system, formed his own company.
United Artists, right?
Yep. He needed that autonomy. He wasn't content to be just another actor churning out films.
He was an artist with a vision.
And he was willing to fight for it, which honestly is a lesson for all of us, isn't it? Sometimes you have to go your own way to achieve your goals.
I think that's a great takeaway. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to the initial question. What made Chaplin a genius?
Yeah. It's not a simple answer, is it?
It's not.
Yeah.
But I think it was this combination of things. His life experiences, his mastery of so many art forms.
His dedication, his vision.
Yeah, and his unwavering pursuit of creative control. All of those things came together to create this, unique voice. A voice that still speaks to us today.
Absolutely. And I hope that's what people take away from this, that Chaplin's films are more than just entertainment.
There's something deeper, right?
Yeah, they make you think, they make you feel, they make you laugh, but they also make you question the world around you.
And they remind us that even in the face of hardship, there's still beauty to be found.
Chaplin found it, and he shared it with the world. And I think, in a way, he showed us how to find it for ourselves.
That's a great point. And I think it's the perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the creative genius of Charlie Chaplin. We hope you enjoyed it, and we encourage you to, revisit his films.
See them with fresh eyes.
Exactly. Maybe you'll discover something new, something you hadn't noticed before. Until next time, happy deep diving.